Good morning, kindergartners. It's Miss Kelly here again today for your Writing Center activity. I want to congratulate you guys because I'm so proud of you for all of your hard work that you did last week in all of your centers, but especially in your Writing Center too. Today I want to talk to you about what a writer is. A writer is someone who shares stories or information and writes it down to share with people. Just like in books or maybe an email or maybe your mom and dad keep a recipe list when you go to the grocery store. Those are all different ways that you can write something. Today we're going to read a story about Library Mouse. And Library Mouse is a tiny mouse who lives in a library, but guess what? He's also a writer. All right. Let's listen.
Sam was a library mouse. His home was in a little hole in the wall behind the children's reference books. And he thought that life was very good indeed. Every day when the library was full of people walking up and down the aisles, studying, checking out books, and working on computers, Sam was curled up in his little hole, sound asleep. Every night when the people went home and the room was dark and quiet, the library belonged to Sam. What do you think Sam will do when the library is closed? And every night Sam read, and he read, and he read. Sam read picture books and chapter books. He read biographies and poetry, cookbooks and sport books, fairy tales and ghost stories and mysteries by the dozen. What is your favorite type of book to read? I enjoy reading picture books and fairy tales. Sam's mind was filled with facts and information and images of faraway places, and his imagination brimmed over with wonder and fantasy. One night, Sam decided it was time he wrote a book of his own. What kind of book do you think Sam will write? Sam folded over some little squares of paper he took from the librarian's desk to make the pages. Then he found a pencil that had rolled underneath the shelf, and he began to write. Write what you know, Sam had read about in a book about writing, so Sam wrote about being a mouse. He drew the pictures for his book by posing in his little mirror and sketching what he saw. Sam worked very, very hard, and finally his book was done. He called it Squeak, A Mouse's Life, and he wrote on the cover words and pictures by Sam. He went to the biography/autobiography section of the library, and he tucked his first book onto the shelf. Biographies are books that tell about someone's real life, and it is written by someone else. An autobiography tells the true story of someone's life, and it is written by that person. Sam wrote an autobiography because he wrote the true story about himself. After putting the book away, he went back to his little hole in the wall and waited. The next afternoon, sunlight streamed in through the library windows. "What's this?" asked a girl whose teacher had sent her to the library to do a book report. "I've never seen anything like this before," said the librarian, and she put Squeak, A Mouse's Life, on her desk. Later, she showed it to the other librarians. Sam decided to write another book. It was called The Lonely Cheese, and working on the book made him very hungry. It was a good thing that he always found so many crumbs to eat by the trash basket in the hallway. When he finished the illustrations, Sam scurried to the picture book section and proudly placed his latest book on the shelf. Then he went back to his little hole in the wall and waited. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through the library windows. "What's this?" asked a little boy who was looking for a big book about trucks. "It's another book by Sam," said the librarian. "Just who is this Sam?" she thought to herself, and put The Lonely Cheese on her desk. Later, she showed it to the children at story time. Sam decided to write a chapter book. It was called The Mystery of Mouse Mansion, and it gave Sam goosebumps when he wrote down the scary parts. The full moon was shining down through the windows of the darkened library when Sam crept over to the mystery section and sneakily placed his book on the shelf. Then he went back to his little hole in the wall and waited. The next day, sunlight streamed in through the library windows. "What's this?" asked a teenager who was looking for a good, creepy book to read before bed. "We've got to find out who this Sam is," said the librarian. "I'll leave a note on the bulletin board and tell him that I would like to meet our new author." She put the Mystery of Mouse Mansion on her desk, and later she showed it to the writing class that came in after school. That night, Sam found the note. It read, "Dear Sam, all of us at the library have been enjoying your books immensely. We are all wondering who this mysterious Sam really is. Whoever you are, you certainly have a lot of talent. Not everyone has it in them to write even a single book, let alone 3. We think it would be fun to have a Meet the Author Day, with you as our special guest. The children would love to hear you read your books and share some of your secrets for writing. Yours truly, Mrs. Forrester, Head Librarian." Sam felt nervous. He was happy that the children at the library liked his books. He was flattered that they wanted to meet him. But mice, as a rule, are very shy when it comes to meeting people. Sam could not understand why people thought writing and making up stories was so hard. If only they would try. They might find out that writing was really lots of fun. Sam had an idea. He went to the librarian's desk and got some supplies. All night long he wrote and drew and snipped and folded and stapled his little rectangles of paper into mouse-sized books. In the morning, when the librarian opened up the children's room, there was a sheet of paper taped to the door. "Meet the author today," it read. A little girl was first to see Sam's display all set up on the front table. "What is this?" she asked. There sat a tissue box with a pair of pencils taped to the side and a banner stretched across the top. On the banner was written, "Meet the author," with an arrow pointing down. What do you think the little girl will see when she looks in the box? The little girl bent over to look in the empty tissue box. "Oh!" she said in surprise, for there at the bottom of the box lay Sam's little mirror, and in the mirror the little girl saw her own face smiling up at her. "Me?" she said. "An author?" Next to the mirror was a stack of tiny blank books and a pile of pencils that Sam had sharpened with his little teeth. All that day, and for many more thereafter, people came to the little display to meet the author. Soon there was a whole shelf full of books written and illustrated by people who had never written a book before, telling stories that had never been told. Sam was a library mouse. His home was a little hole in the wall behind the children's reference book. All that night, Sam sat in his hole thinking and thinking about the next book he would write. Would it be a mystery, an adventure, a funny book, a true story? There were so many stories to tell. "Aha!" he thought. I'll just have to write one of each." Sam picked up his pencil and got to work. In Library Mouse, Sam wrote 3 different genres of books. Genres are the different types of books, such as mystery, autobiography, and adventure. You can also write your own books at home. You will need paper and something to write and draw with, such as a pencil and crayons. To write a book, you first have to brainstorm what type of book you want to write about. Do you want it to be nonfiction or fiction? Nonfiction means it is based on real events or real people, such as a biography. Fiction means it is about imaginary people or events, such as books about dragons or talking animals. After you have decided if you want it to...
All right, writers. I hope that you liked that book about Sam. Today, we are going to become our own writers. I want for you to say, "I am a writer." Can you say that? Let's try it together. I am a writer. Awesome. So, as you can see, Sam decided that he wanted to be a writer also, and he inspired a lot of the other kids to become writers too. They were called authors. An author is someone who writes the book. So, This year, we are going to be authors. What I want for you to do for our writing activity today is get your notebook that we've been writing in, your writing notebook, and we are going to draw a self-portrait. This is a self-portrait of Miss Kelly. A self-portrait is just a picture of you. So what I want for you to do is on your picture, I want for you to write your name. Right here I wrote Miss Kelly, and that's okay if you can't write your name yet. I want you to practice writing your name. So write your name, Miss Kelly, and then later, after you do your self-portrait, I want your grown-up, whoever's at home with you, to write, is a writer. And that will say, Miss Kelly is a writer. All right, you ready? Go for it.